Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and we are here finally at the NFL Mock Draft 3.0. This will be my final big hurrah of mock drafts. I am going to be getting a little bit crazy in this draft, so since this is supposed to be a predictive mock draft, and it's my final one, and I do go with some out there, like, low chance of happening things here, I am going to actually do a quick first round predictive mock draft that I will release the morning of the draft, so in like 4 days here. Happy mock draft week. So I'm excited to get into this draft. There is one thing I created, little visuals that I will be putting up at the for each team's draft class once I take their final draft pick in this class, so that way you can kind of see the overall strategy that I ended up going for the teams and just see the draft haul. Now let's get on to the draft, and first of all, we do have a trade to get out of the way here. We don't know for sure that this trade's going to come through, but I think both teams would like it to before the draft begins. So I'm just going to go with what seems to be the common thought right now of roughly what the teams should be getting out of this. And so it's a conditional pick for 2024 and this year's second from New York to get Aaron Rodgers, and a conditional 2025 pick. Don't need to get too into it. That's good enough for the purposes of this mock draft. So we will get that trade through and start this draft. Now for the first pick here for Carolina, the argument that Carolina is spending all of that capital in order to move up here and take the safest quarterback pick that is in this draft being a bad idea, I think holds some weight. I don't believe that they swing for the fences with the biggest boom or bust pick here in Anthony Richardson. Instead, I have them going with the undersized but exciting Bryce Young. As of the time of doing this mock draft, when I started it, there were rumblings, and there still are, that Houston doesn't have a big preference in quarterback after Bryce Young. That's who they want. They don't get him. Not a huge preference. And I already explored that possibility before those rumblings came out, because I did think that that could be a possibility, because I've always thought that Houston definitely wanted Bryce Young. This time, they're going to play it smarter than they did in that mock. That's one of my quick mocks. That's the quarterback chaos quick mock if you wanted to watch that. But this time, I'm going to have them be a little bit smarter, and they're going to look to trade back. Here's the issue. How do you trade back from here? You essentially would need to bribe Arizona in order to come up this one spot. I see you having to essentially pay them in order to come up. Doesn't make sense to do that. Do you really want to help Indianapolis, an interdivisional team rival here, to get their guy? And if you're having an open dialogue with them of why this pick's open, which you pretty much have to, what's going to be the motivation for Indianapolis to come up? Okay, well, you're not taking a quarterback. That's fine by us. We want a quarterback. So go right ahead and take whoever you want to take. The other side of that would be that maybe Houston could view this as they're not, if they don't take a quarterback here, are they really preventing Indianapolis from getting their guy anyway? So you might as well get some capital and trade with Indianapolis and let them get their guy that they're going to get here at pick 3 or 4 anyways. So that could be the counter to that logic. Then I'm going to go into this draft here talking about picks 5 and 6 potentially trading up, thinking that I don't really think that Seattle or Detroit want to spend their capital to move up in this draft. I think they would rather take two high-end guys here in the first round. It's my personal thoughts, but I won't argue with either of them if they decide to go up and get a quarterback in this draft, or take one when one comes to them. The same could be said of Las Vegas here at pick 7. Really don't think they're going to want to spend the capital to come up to pick 2. And then once you get to the Falcons, are you going to end up with any quarterback at all here? I mean, you possibly might just miss out on all 4 quarterbacks, and you could get yourself 3 first-round picks for 2024, which would be, I think, the path to go at that point. But do you really want to push this quarterback thing, off for another year? I don't know. For the purposes of this mock draft, I don't think so. And in the real world, I don't think so. But That's a possibility, I would say. Then if you look back further, all the way to the Titans here, they may be willing to break the bank here to move all the way up. However, they're an interdivisional rival too, so why would you really want to help them do that? You probably don't. The only option would be to entice a team with your number 12 pick and know that a deal is pretty much secured there, and then you can not go quarterback here if you want a quarterback in this draft class. And I think that in this scenario, that's what I have happening. I have Houston and the Las Vegas Raiders with a handshake deal here. Las Vegas agrees to a deal that Houston could sweeten if Las Vegas were to, if somebody were to fall Las Vegas that they're not expecting here, in order to make that happen still. But for now, there's a handshake deal that, once again, Houston could sweeten that pot even a little bit more if need be. In this case, I have Houston pretty much stuck here and going to be shocking the world by taking Will Anderson. Now, at the time of going through this mock draft, the first time when I started working on this 4-round mock draft, by the way, I'm sure that's in the thumbnail, but I didn't say that in the beginning of this video, that was absolutely... hadn't seen that at all. Now, in the 3 or 4 days since then, to the time that I'm filming this, that has become a definite possibility. So it's not as earth-shattering by the time that this comes out in a few more days, I'm sure. But I do want to touch on the pace of this mock draft. So I'm going through these first 10 picks here or so because there's a lot of exciting stuff going on at the early portion of this draft. Then I'm going to sprint through the rest of the first round. Going to try to go through the second round as quickly as I can. Going to stop filming there, edit that down, and then I'm going to do rounds 3 and 4. And the main reason I'm going 4 rounds is I really want to talk on some of the players that don't get talked about a whole lot. You know, obviously we focus on these high-end draft players, and then you don't know anything about those 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. So I would like to at least get a little bit of information out there on some of those guys who you really rarely see talked about. That's the main reason that I went 4 rounds, and just to see what, you know, some of the fruits of some of these trades and whatnot work out for teams in that 4th round. So with that, Arizona's up on the board, and at the time of doing this, I felt like the price just went up here for the Colts or anybody to trade up. However, I have heard the argument that the price would go down here. That makes enough sense too. That's just not how I did it here. And I do think that at the very least, Indianapolis could feel that the price has artificially gone up, even if Arizona knows that it really hasn't. And so I have Arizona still looking to trade back, and the price has gone up. Instead of getting a late 3rd round pick back, like pick 66, pick 96, back to the Indianapolis Colts in this trade, I have the Colts getting a 2024 round 3. So nothing too earth-shattering, but just a little bit more expensive for the Colts. And so I have the Indianapolis Colts now up on the board, and it's between Will Levis and CJ Stroud, and I'm going to go back to the thought process, you know, from like a month ago or so, where we say that the Colts want a big traits guy, and that's not CJ Stroud, so I'm still going to be taking Will Levis here for them at pick 3. Then Arizona's up on the board, and they got some extra draft capital, so they're going to take a swing here on Jalen Carter. Seattle's going to take Tyree Wilson off of the board. Here's a big trade, a tease this, I'm sure, in the thumbnail. Detroit Lions are going to receive a trade offer here from the Tennessee Titans. And that is correct, folks. You're seeing this correctly. The Detroit Lions are going to trade picks 6, 18, and a future 2nd round draft pick for pick 11, a future 1st round, and Jeffrey Simmons here. So I think you can essentially think of, we're doing a pick swap here, round 1 and round 2, and then pick 18 for Jeffrey Simmons, and there's just a little left over here from that 11 to 6 trade going on between both of those trades. So we're going to put that trade through, it gets accepted, and Detroit is happy to move out of this mess in another blockbuster trade here already happening, where Detroit's going to, you know, help beef up that interior line while also not having to take the risk of getting Jalen Carter. So it works out really well, and Tennessee reportedly likes CJ Stroud, so I'd love to give them the big arm of Anthony Richardson, and I could go either way, but I'm going to trust that rumor, and they are going to end up going CJ Stroud. A little bit more on this. With that, the Titans are aiming to tear down and rebuild quickly here. And Detroit is going for a Super Bowl this year, and now they have extra ammo to help them move up in the 2024 draft class to get one of those quarterbacks who are supposed to be better than what we have in this draft class. May or may not be by the time we get there, and they're going to be able to, the plan is to be able to get their guy of choosing there, and then they're going to be back in to the chase for a Super Bowl 2-3 years after that, 2025, 2026, and beyond, setting themselves up here for now and in the future. And we're on to pick 7 here, and as you recall, Las Vegas and Houston had already come to a deal. The only reason that Vegas would have gotten cold feet here would have been if one of those 3 interior defensive linemen had made it to them here at pick 7, so they're just happy to go through with the deal as already put together here with Houston. Now you might say, oh, Las Vegas might want a quarterback. Not in this scenario, at least. They already agreed to this deal, understanding that the only reason Houston was coming up was for a quarterback. So they knew that that was part of the deal. Anyways, Houston trades pick 12, 73, and a future first rounder here. Going to swap that into a second rounder, gets 109 back to come up to pick 7. And that gets accepted, and we see Anthony Richardson coming off of the board here for Houston, going for the home run hitter. As far as Las Vegas' plan here, it looks a lot like Detroit's plan, where they are now building up some ammunition to go up in the 2024 draft and get one of those quarterbacks. If, at that point in time, that's what they would like to do, see what happens with the rest of the draft and into the future. Then the Falcons come up onto the board. Atlanta is looking to get more quality picks, so the prospect of moving their 75th pick up to 43 here works well for them. Going to move back 5 spots for that. And the New York Jets are going to secure the best offensive lineman in this draft to keep Aaron Rodgers happy on his feet and comfortable in that pocket by taking Peter Skoronski. The Bears are going to take Paris Johnson Jr., and we're going to see another trade here. And look at that. They already had it prepped. New England is going to be coming up. Now, the logic here is New England sees those top offensive linemen coming off the board, and they want their pick at cornerback to take the best of the class, and that's what they're going to do. They are going to come up here and take Devin Witherspoon off the board, and this works out perfectly for Detroit. They were hoping to get one of these top 2 cornerbacks, and they do in Christian Gonzalez, and Las Vegas is a little bit disappointed to see those 2 go off the board right in front of them here. So they're going to go for Broderick Jones to help out their offensive line, which needs some help. Falcons are going to go Nolan Smith, and Philadelphia is going to take my number 2 interior defensive lineman in Mozzie Smith. Green Bay would probably be looking to trade back, but we are going to give them Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Washington has their pick here of cornerbacks if that's the route they would want to go. And I have Joey Porter Jr. higher up on my draft board. However, I think that Deonte Banks makes more sense for Washington, and I think he's higher up on their board than JPJ, just based on an argument that I've heard. Then Joey Porter Jr. goes up to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's just going to be selling a bunch of jerseys, and they like the... We'll see what they still have offensive line to address, but they're playing the board wisely right now. Actually, you will see soon enough. Then Tennessee has got their quarterback. Now they need to make sure that he's comfortable and fix up that offensive line. And I have that being Dwan Jones. And then we're going to see Jacksonville not taking any chances here, moving up with their 25th and 56th pick to get up to pick 19, receiving 82 back in compensation. And they are going to come up to get their guy in Brian Branch, who should be an awesome fit for them. Then the Seattle Seahawks come up onto the board, and I think Brian Brzee would be a better fit personally, but Kalijah Kancey has a lot more connections so far if you look around to Seattle, so I will go that route. And then the Chargers need some more weapons for Herbert, so I have him going Dalton Kincaid there. They could go wide receiver. There's rumblings of that. However, I actually think that that might be a smokescreen in order for teams to, not really know what they truly want out of this draft, not try to trade up ahead of them. I think that Tampa Bay pick is definitely going to be up for sale, and so I have them going Dalton Kincaid. Then I have Baltimore looking to move back here, and they actually find a very unlikely trade partner in Cincinnati who wants the number 1 tight end on my board, and that is Darnell Washington. I don't end up loving this trade for Cincinnati at the end of the day for this mock draft. Then Minnesota comes up, and they're going to take Miles Murphy, a very talented player who's still on the board. And Tampa Bay is once again going to move back and consolidate their picks even further, and New Orleans is going to get to pick up an early 6th rounder in this trade. So New Orleans is going to move up to pick 24 with pick 29 and 40, and then get back 56 and 179 there. And with that, New Orleans saw the interior defensive lineman coming off the board. They would really like to get some more help down there, and they're going to take Brian Brzee. Then the New York Giants are going to, they need another wide receiver there to complete this wide receiver core, so have them going Quentin Johnston. Dallas, if they see this man still on the board when they're coming up to pick, it's hard to imagine that they'll pass up on him. Bijan Robinson it is, and Buffalo needs to protect their franchise. I have them doing that in Anton Harrison. Then Baltimore comes up onto the board, and their phones are just ringing off of the chains. I had Seattle, Kansas City, and Pitt all make offers for this pick. And unfortunately for them, Pittsburgh had the best offer to give them. And apparently there is peace in the AFC North in this draft. And also we saw Tampa Bay, New Orleans make a trade. So a lot of interdivisional trades going on right now. And so this is what the trade looks like. Baltimore is going to give up pick 28 and 86 and a 3rd rounder, going to move back to 32, but move all the way up here to 49, which is what was really enticing to Baltimore, even though they do have to give up a little bit of future capital to really make that end up working. It's a pretty big jump up there for a small jump back right here, especially when you look at the talent pool. But if you're in need of an offensive lineman, and Baltimore might be, very well might be, but I guess I don't have them doing that in this draft, then there is an end of the kind of second tier, if you want to say, of offensive linemen here in Darnell Wright. There's a 1st and a 2nd tier of offensive linemen, but I don't think there's a big drop off once you go after them compared to those 1st and 2nd tiers are close enough. And finally, Tampa Bay is going to start to build something here and get some high-end replacements for their post-Brady roster turnover, and they're going to start that with B.J. Ojulari. Philadelphia is going to follow suit as far as the position goes and really help to set this defensive line up for the future here in Adetomiwa Adebawore. And then Kansas City comes up onto the board, and I don't really think that they're loving the board right now, and there are some teams calling up for a few players. So they have a few options, end up going with this trade offer from Arizona. Arizona seizes the opportunity to get themselves an absolute playmaker here. So this is the trade, pick 34 to move up to 31 and 105, and they'll get 166 back from Kansas City. And like I said, they're coming up here to get an absolute playmaker at a position of need, which is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. They do not have a good group of running backs, and they're likely going to want to be leaning on this running game this upcoming season in order to try to keep these games within reach at least. And going into the future, he'll just be a great weapon for them. Baltimore comes up onto the board, and Brandon Stevens had a rough 2nd season in 2022. The Ravens spent a pair of picks on cornerback in the 4th round last year, and a couple of interesting players, but Baltimore may still need to shape up their cornerback room here. The hope is that Cam Smith will be a quality running mate across from Marlon Humphrey. He is fit for the kind of attitude that we expect out of this Baltimore defense, so I like that as well for Cam Smith in Baltimore. Then I have 3 wide receivers actually above this pick on my draft board. I have Houston going Jalen Hyatt. Houston drafted Anthony Richardson in this draft, if you recall, and we want to make sure that when Anthony gets onto the field, which may be sooner than later, that he has someone that he can absolutely unleash his cannon to deep downfield, and Jalen Hyatt is the single most explosive downfield threat in this wide receiver draft class, and he has a big catch radius to help with any accuracy concerns that we may have with Anthony Richardson. So Jalen Hyatt it is to Houston. Kansas City comes up onto the board, and options are absolutely getting thin at the tackle position. Going to have them go Matthew Bergeron. He might be a better guard than he is tackle at the next level. However, the hope here is that he can come in and help at tackle. If not, you get probably a good offensive lineman at least. And here we come to the second trade that I'm almost certainly I have the idea mapped out for the thumbnail, so it should be up there as a teaser. It's going to be Las Vegas getting DeAndre Hopkins from Arizona. They're going to pick up the tab on him and help Arizona out in regards of getting out from that contract, as well as obviously adding them onto their team. They're going to also move up here 3 spots to get pick 35 by giving up picks 38, pick 70, and then a future 5th rounder for these 2 picks. So blockbuster trade here for Las Vegas, and I have the Raiders coming up here to take Lucas Van Ness, who is a potential stud at edge, which will hopefully help out Max Crosby because the man needs some help. Has for a long time. The Rams need help on their offensive line, and their run game also needs help, so Osiris Torrance can kind of help out in both ways there. Then Seattle comes up onto the board, and for the same reason that I loved Tariq Woolen last year, he was an absolute my guy, probably my 3rd favorite cornerback of that draft class. Julius Brents is a my guy this year. He's a big, long-armed, physical, and versatile player who should fit really well in Seattle. They've having him the opposite of Tariq Woolen would just be pretty darn sweet. Then Arizona comes up onto the board, and with Jalen Carter now plugging up things at the center of this defense, pure edge rusher like Will McDonald will absolutely bring some pop that they really, really need on this defensive line as they begin to rebuild that. Now, Carolina comes up onto the board, and we're going to see Atlanta move up here from pick 44 to 39, giving up pick 113 in return. And Carolina accepts that. Atlanta isn't taking any chances here, and they come up a little ways to grab Zay Flowers off of the board, and Carolina gets some much-needed draft capital from them in return. So it works out for both teams there. And I gotta tell you, Tampa Bay sure has done their homework on the tight ends of this draft class, but I don't see how they can afford to absolutely ignore the offensive line if they don't intend on taking Hendon Hooker with their next draft pick, which is the intent that I have for them in this mock draft. Then maybe they could go tight end here and then offensive line in, I think it's 10 picks is their next pick. But that's not the plan that I have them going with. I have them drafting Steve Avila here. And then Tennessee has had an exciting start to their mock draft. They've got their quarterback, and they've picked up an offensive lineman to help make him feel more comfortable. They did get rid of part of their defensive line, so we can't ignore that side of the ball for too long. And I don't know that any of the current wide receivers, which is another need for them right now, really are a fit for a need for the Titans. By current, I just mean the guys that we're kind of expecting to start to be going around this time in the draft, or maybe have already gone. So I do think that Josh Downs is a scheme and culture fit for Tennessee. However, I think that they need someone who can take the top off of defense, and that's not really Josh Downs. So they're going to take a hybrid defensive end and outside linebacker here in Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who should be a nice culture fit as well. Green Bay comes up onto the board, and I have a hard time imagining, given this draft, if Michael Mayer were available, that they would be taking him. Now, Atlanta just moved up a short bit ago, and so they're going to be happy here to acquire a little bit of draft capital and smush these. They're going to improve their capital again, kind of like they did earlier, and they're going to get picks 56 and 71 from New Orleans. Now, the first time I did this, I had to also give a 7th round pick from Atlanta over to New Orleans to get this done. So we shall see here. It is accepted, so we did not need to do that. And Atlanta thinks that this trade will help them to net a couple of positions of need without really missing out on too much, at least, tier-wise for their positions that they're looking at right now. And New Orleans is going to go with my number 2 wide receiver in Josh Downs. He is not on every team's board due to his size, or probably not at least, but he plays bigger than his size, and he's excellent at catching contested balls, and he simply makes big plays. He's a pure slot wide receiver, but I think that he's going to give this New Orleans offense an element that they just currently don't have, a dimension. Then Carolina comes up onto the board, and they're going to grab Jordan Addison. Carolina has addressed the wide receiver position in free agency a fair bit here in order to, so that, their new quarterback doesn't come into some sort of terrible situation. But they do still need to help to improve it for now and for into the future. And I think that Jordan Addison is a unique, and he's a crafty route runner who could learn a lot from Adam Thielen, really. I think that's somebody who would be a good mentor for him. So I like that all around for Carolina. Then Green Bay is going to take Sidney Brown. Could be a reach definitely here, and for many reasons, not only because he's a safety, but also according to a lot of people's draft boards. But Green Bay is definitely in need of a safety. Don't know if Sidney Brown's the type of safety they're in need for, but I absolutely love him. So maybe that's a bit of a me pick. It's possible. Then New England comes up onto the board, and I believe I have them taking an offer from the New York Giants as well as Seattle. Chicago doesn't really, it's not a good trade situation for them. But Seattle wants to ensure that they get their favorite center prospect, and so they make this trade. They're able to offer the Patriots a pretty solid value, which beats out an offer coming in from the Giants, as I mentioned. Little does Seattle know that their primary competition here, currently looking at gunning and coming up for center, they prefer Luke Whippler over John Michael Schmitz. But you can't blame them for, thinking otherwise, because John Michael Schmitz is a prototypical and experienced center who should be, he's number one on a lot of people's draft boards. I have a 1A and a 1B between him and Whippler. Washington is going to continue to improve their defense by getting an absolute stud here at linebacker in Jack Campbell, and Detroit's going to follow suit for position, and they're going to get Trenton Simpson. They've upgraded their defensive line, they've upgraded their secondary, now it's time to upgrade their linebacking core, and Trenton Simpson has excellent range in pursuit, and he finishes plays with power. Baltimore comes up onto the board, and Baltimore is going to help shape up their front seven with a speed to power edge / defensive end. In Tuli Tuipulotu, he can help in gap control. He's a north to south downhill player who can help across the whole defensive line, really. But he can also drop back into coverage and really help out in coverage against the tight ends mostly. The best part is that he can't even legally drink yet, so there's still room for Tuli to grow. It was mentioned that New York Giants have been looking to come up here and talking to teams, and in Tampa Bay they find a partner. Tampa Bay is going to be trading back once again. There were several suitors for this trade, but the Giants had the best offer. And the Giants are going to come up for their man in Luke Whippler. Now, I've talked about Luke Whippler enough. The short of it is that he can be able to help Danny Dimes both in the pocket and when he runs out of the pocket. So that's where I like him there. Then Miami comes up onto the board, and given the situation, if there's just little doubt in my mind that in a lot of circumstances here, Sam Laporta will be going to Miami if he's available. They desperately need tight end, and he's a good fit. Then New England's going to come up onto the board next, and Cole Strange was my dark horse love of the draft last year as far as offensive linemen went, so it's only fitting for them to get another draft crush of mine along the offensive line, and that's going to be Blake Freeland here, who can also move really well laterally. This offense wants to use the field laterally, and Blake should definitely help to make that a more successful mission of theirs. And then we see here why New York was trying to come up to the board. Chicago is in need of a center, but with the top two centers taken off the board, they are going to go for another need in defensive back. And Chicago is going to take the very physical press man corner in Tyreek Stevenson. He has good length and the mass to back up his aggressive approach to the game. And the Chargers come up onto the board next, and the Chargers are comfortable with moving back a little ways here. It's not the best deal in the world for them, but they think that there's going to be plenty of talent in areas of need when they now get their 3 picks in the 80s here. Getting picks 82 and 88 here for pick 54. As you can see, they already have pick 85. And that offer will be accepted. Jacksonville wants to ensure that they get an offensive lineman of their desires in order to help fortify this offensive line, and the trade value was in their favor here anyways, so they're going to come up and they are going to take Jalen Duncan off of the board. And then we have the Detroit Lions coming up. And there is nothing worse than having one of your team's strengths turn into a weakness. So the Lions are going to take some high-quality depth here for their offensive line. A guy who should be able to develop into a starter in the future, and he could save them from a cap situation in a couple of years here. And that is going to be Tyler Steen coming off the board to the Lions. Could be a really, really good pick there. The Falcons could stand to get more stout along their front seven, and Keanu Benton is going to bring some raw power in his quick and violent hands that no doubt are so great due to his time, his wrestling background, time spent wrestling. Then Tampa Bay comes up onto the board, and yeah, you guessed it. Like, here's the thing for Tampa Bay, why they're trading. If Tampa is planning to get a quarterback and Hendon Hooker is their target, I think that it's still too soon here. I don't think they're too afraid of him going, especially to the teams currently right up here. There aren't a lot of players worth moving up for, but tight end is one that may be worth it at this point in the draft, as there is the last of a tier remaining. So there are 2 teams that were willing to move up here to Tampa Bay's spot, and those were Tennessee and Kansas City. Tennessee offered pick 72 and a future third-round draft pick for 57, and then get a future fifth-round draft pick back. But Kansas City's offer here, pick 63, 134, and a future fourth, just felt better, and that helps to ensure Tampa Bay better odds of getting their quarterback target here that they could have taken a couple times now, and probably nobody would have said too much about it. So then Kansas City comes up, and they are going to take that tight end target that I talked about in Luke Musgrave. Dallas comes up onto the board, and I think Dallas really wants to improve their defensive line, and in Siaki Ika, they're going to get a massive dude. At the very least for Dallas, Siaki Ika is going to be a space eater, and he's going to open things up to allow the other playmakers along this defense, and they do have plenty of them, to be playmakers. Like I said, he's massive and he has good athletics for his size. I think there's an additional upside if he can cut some weight over the next year or two to just help that athleticism maybe come to fruition more and be more of a penetrating threat. And then a little bit of coaching up in the run-stopping game won't hurt, too. Then Buffalo comes up onto the board, and they're going to take a bit of a developmental prospect here in Drew Sanders at linebacker. Even though he is a bit of a developmental prospect, he has the highest upside of any linebacker in this draft class, and so that's what you love about Drew Sanders, is that upside. Now, Cincinnati could, take offensive line here. That wouldn't be a bad option, but there is a super upside guy at another position of need in cornerback, and that is DJ Turner here. He is technically sound and he is ultra athletic. I think that this would be an excellent fit for Cincinnati's scheme, and the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC is paved through, you got to get there and face against some mighty fine quarterback play. So you need to be able to adapt defensively, and you cannot afford to ignore the defensive backfield here. So a versatile playmaker like DJ Turner can bring a lot of everything to this unit. Not a little bit of everything, quite a bit of a lot of everything to this defensive back end. Then Chicago comes up onto the board, and Chicago is going to continue to improve their offensive line. And I see two options here. They could go Joe Tippmann or Cody Mauch, really looking for center here. Cody Mauch played tackle in college. He projects to the NFL as a guard, but some people believe that he may be best served in the NFL as a center. Joe Tippmann, he played center, and some feel that he may project better to guard. I am kind of one of those for sure, and for Cody Mauch, I'm more of they both kind of project to guard for me. But Joe played center, and he has some experience here, so that's what we're going to go with. We're going to go with the experience in Joe Tippmann. He is a massive human being. He does struggle with getting pushed off balance at the point of attack there, which is where his size can be a disadvantage for him. Centers need to get into position the quickest out of anyone in the game, out of anyone along the offensive line, and being as big as Joe is, getting into position and not getting beat by leverage movers can be really tough for a guy that size. Joe can, however, move upfield really well, especially for such a big man, and he could absolutely lay out some game-breaking blocks downfield for Justin Fields at the second level probably, when Justin Fields takes off and runs. To me, it's a worst-case scenario when you're taking Joe Tippmann that he's going to come in year one and he'll improve, he'll be an upgrade at center here. But then in the year 2024, you get yourself a true center. If you have concerns, you're not loving Joe Tippmann there at center, get yourself a true center then, and then you can move Joe Tippmann out to guard, and you have the need along the offensive line anyways, yet for that you could use another guard. So I think that's the how it works out for Chicago here. Philadelphia is going to come up onto the draft board next year, and getting a solid piece along the offensive line is starting to become a big question mark at like all the offensive line, and Philadelphia would like to add a good depth piece there so that doesn't become any kind of issue, and they're going to need it in the future, so they pull the trigger on the positional question mark of Cody Mauch, as I have there already. Then Tampa Bay cannot trade back forever, so they finally take their quarterback in Grandpa Hooker here. He's a 26-year-old quarterback prospect who, depending on who you talk to, is either a great prospect or an absolute dud. Either way, everyone pretty much agrees that he is still one of the top quarterback prospects in this class, and Tampa should know if he is their future by the time that he's 28 years old, and lucky for them, that's only going to be 2 years down the road. So Hendon Hooker it is to Tampa Bay, and that's going to finish up our first 2 rounds. I'm going to now find out how long that took me to get through, edit this down. I'll come back tomorrow or the day after and do rounds 3 and 4 with a better idea of how long I have to spend on those, how to pace that. So I'll see you now, then, in a half of a second. Bye. And hello. We are going to kick off the 3rd round here. First up on the board in the 3rd round are the Chicago Bears, and the Bears have addressed their biggest needs, and there are several players of great value currently on the board. As you can see, there are 14 teams currently trying to trade up to this spot. They could get a running back in Devin Achane here who would add an element that they do not currently have in their backfield. Or they could go linebacker, as there is a need there, and there is a guy who I have a 2nd round value on left in Daiyan Henley. Trading back with Denver right here would be enticing, try and get both of these picks. But it's a tough trade, and then they lose out on Daiyan Henley almost surely because that's probably who Denver would be coming up to get. There is a trade here in Arizona that looks good, and hey, look at that, they're interested in it. So we are going to see Arizona giving up picks 66, 67 to move up to 64. Going to get 103 back in return and a future 3rd round from Chicago in return. And we're going to see how this works out for Chicago, if they are going to be able to get their targets. And with that, Arizona came up for their target here in Emmanuel Forbes. Houston comes up onto the board next, and they're looking to make a little bit more out of their current capital, and they may even trade back again if they can get the right kind of trade. So we are going to see the Atlanta Falcons trade pick 71, 224, and a future 4th in order to get up to 65. Going to get 259 and then a future 5th back in return. And with that in this draft, this will be the final pick for the Atlanta Falcons. And Atlanta comes up for a target in Kelee Ringo, who can come in as an ultra-athletic, sizable defensive back, and he will help fill out this unit that we have built on that side of the ball, that the Falcons have built on that side of the ball. They want to make life easy for Desmond Ridder, and by keeping games close, that's going to be a big part of that for this team. Chicago comes up onto the board now, and they did not miss out on target number 1, Daiyan Henley. He is target number 1 because we know that the Broncos have interest in him. Daiyan Henley is a wide receiver to defensive line to linebacker convert who has been really excelled throughout these changes. He still has some growing to do, both physically and on the field, but he is a really, really solid sub-package linebacker prospect who has come up big in a lot of situations where, you know, they needed someone to make a play, and he was the guy to do that in those situations. Then Denver is up onto the board next, and they need some help on their front 7, so that'll be the focus for these next 2 picks for them. First up is going to be at end, and I have them taking Moro Ojomo. Moro brings some versatility to this line. He's a high-effort player with good length and good football IQ. He's more of an early down guy, but he is not a liability on the field in passing situations, as he does provide some sort of decent pass rush as well. Then with their second pick, Denver could go Keon White, but he's both an older prospect and he's not as versatile as Isaiah Foskey. So going back to Moro Ojomo, he's a guy who could play as an end, or he could kick inside from there. Isaiah is a guy who could play at edge, or he could kick down or inside into at the end spot. So you're getting a pair of guys between these two who can really contribute in all different situations between the two of them. Isaiah is a high character leader, and it brings an explosive element to the Broncos, which they definitely need. He's also dynamite on special teams, which is always appreciated. And then the Rams have a lot of needs, and I'm stuck between wide receiver and safety here for them. I was torn between the two, but I'm going to end up leaning into offense being more important to Sean McVay than defense is. And Nathaniel Tank Dell will give this team an explosive threat on offense and on special teams. They've been trying to get a field stretcher, and it just hasn't seemed to have worked so far, so Tank Dell is their next attempt at that. And that's going to bring Chicago back up onto the board with their trade back situation, which has worked. Remember, their 2 targets were Daiyan Henley and Devin Achane that they were interested in at pick 64. End up getting both of them by trading back, and I wouldn't be shocked if Devin Achane had been taken even as high as when the Falcons traded up here. He was high on the board there for them to he was, I think, next up behind Kelee Ringo. And then the Los Angeles Rams also were thinking about it. If there is any player in this running back draft class who could be more explosive and game-changing than Jahmyr Gibbs, is going to be Devon Achane. I don't know if it's Devon or Devon, but with the threat of Fields at quarterback and his running abilities, that's going to make the dual threat between the two, Devon Achane and Fields, all the more scary, and could work out very nicely. I brought up that Houston might be looking to trade back once again after that last trade, and they are going to consolidate their picks just a little bit further here with the Cleveland Browns going from 71 to 74, getting 98 in return, and sending 109 back to the Browns. Little pick swap situation here. Houston was looking for 2 picks around in the 80s like the Los Angeles Chargers and Pittsburgh have, but neither of those teams wanted to move up right here. This was the only mutual trade that I thought that made any sense. Cleveland needs help at the safety position, and Jordan Battle is a fluid, physical, high IQ player who Brian Branch called a leader. Cleveland could use some leadership to get that unit to play to its full potential. They've been a bit of an underperforming unit as over the past couple of years, so getting a good leader in there in the back might help to get things to be more cohesive and come together. Then Tennessee's going to come up for their final pick of this mock draft, and I would love to give them tight end Tucker Kraft, but there is a wide receiver that we have higher on the board in Rashee Rice here, and I think a small, fast target would be great for this team as far as a need, but I don't know that it's really a want. I don't know that that's what they would do. Rashee is a great system fit, and I think he offers enough different qualities from Treylon Burks to bring something new to this offense. He has an excellent first step, and he is explosive. He plays hard, he high points the ball well, and he has a large catch radius. Plus, just like Treylon Burks, he is built quite well. CJ Stroud should feel comfortable with his targets in this offense at this point, and these 2 wide receivers, being Burks and Rashee Rice, can help to block in both the running game and downfield for Kyle Phillips and Chig Okonkwo when they catch the ball. Las Vegas comes up to the board, and we're going to give them cornerback Eli Ricks. He has great ball skills in both press man and while playing off coverage. He has good game IQ and good instincts. He should be a quick upgrade to this alien secondary. Houston comes up onto the board, and the phone lines have finally run dry. This is really as good as it gets for them, kind of consolidating their picks around this area of the draft. They're going to need help on the interior of their offensive line, and although this prospect won't be of any help to them in 2023, he is going to be a mighty fine addition in 2024. I thought Andrew Voorhees was in the conversation as the second best guard in this class. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL at the combine. He's an ultra-powerful anchor in the pass game to help ensure that CJ Stroud isn't going to feel any pressure right in front of his face, which we know is one of the concerns with CJ Stroud, so that should help to take that away coming up in 2024, of course. The Jets need more capital, and now, unlike earlier with, I think, Chicago, it's more feasible for them for the Chargers to move up here in a trade like this. Not going to cost them too much capital, so they're going to move up from pick 82 to 75 and give up pick 156. And they're going to get a draft target of theirs in safety, Antonio Johnson. There is a hole at the nickelback on this team for the Chargers, and Antonio Johnson is a great scheme fit. He played in the slot most in college, and the Chargers can put him in a role where he's going to be most comfortable as a slot safety. He has good size, he has processes things really well along the field, and he absolutely loves to hit and blitz. Loves it. He lit up when that question was asked at the combine. Then Philadelphia comes up onto the board next, and they're going to be taking a my guy here. Absolutely loved watching this guy's tape. Can't remember if he's, there we go, Jartavius Martin, safety. He is a safety cornerback. He's a versatile defensive back who I labeled as L'Jarius Sneed-esque, quotes there. He's a physical player, and I think that he can come right in and fill this team's need after losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He's one of my favorite guys in this draft. The Rams are going to come up and take their final pick of the draft in Keon White. The Rams need some juice on their defense, and Keon White is a freak athlete. He's still a bit raw, but he can contribute on all 3 downs. He's just one of several pieces yet needed on this defense. He's not going to be able to do it all on his own, but with the right pieces around him and some solid coaching, he could definitely be a gem in this draft. He's a boom or bust kind of prospect, a little bit older prospect as well. Then Green Bay is going to come onto the board, and the value isn't quite there on my board at edge, and the Packers need a quarterback, backup quarterback. The Packers have a history of developing quarterbacks, and there's really only one day 2 or later quarterback prospect in this class who isn't over the age of 24 already to start their career in the NFL. He is also a potential backup plan if Jordan Love isn't good enough and he surpasses Jordan Love's development, in a year or two. It's lame, but it's quite possibly necessary here to take Tanner McKee. At least I think it is in the Packers' minds. To be clear, I hate how the ball comes out of Tanner McKee's hands when you watch the film, but that is something I think that could be fixed. And then the Indianapolis Colts come up. They absolutely need to address their offensive line, and someone that I have recently moved up a little bit on my board is going to be Chandler Zavala. Enough people that I respect seem to absolutely love him. He excels in pass blocking, which should help Will Levis, of course. The big knock on Chandler is that I've come across is that he has a lack of attitude when he plays. But I don't think that that's, it's necessary to have some sort of mean streak in order to play along the offensive line. It's not something, it can be helpful, but I don't think it's necessary. There's nothing wrong with being a nice level-headed offensive lineman as long as they get the job done, right? Then the Pittsburgh Steelers come up onto the board, and I got a notification shortly before making this pick that Pittsburgh may be trading for Allen Robinson later on that day. That did happen. But honestly, if the value isn't really there elsewhere, do I really think that that's going to stop them from getting an impact wide receiver? No, I don't. And A.T. Perry is a prototypical X-wide receiver who can help move the chains, and he already has a well-developed route tree. He's not a separator, but he catches the ball well in traffic. He makes plays, and this offense needs more of that, and Kenny Pickett needs all of the weapons that he can have around him in order to succeed. So A.T. Perry it is. Then Detroit's going to come up and take their final pick of this mock draft. Detroit has a nice receiver core, but they could still stand to upgrade at the position, and the value currently is ripe on the board here at the wide receiver position. So why not get yourself the right man for the job in Cedric Tillman here? Tillman is a prototypical X-wide receiver who has great body control when adjusting to the ball. He has good hands and he finds ways to get open. He's going to need a little bit of development at the next level, most notably with his route tree. Then the New York Jets are going to not be the first team to reach at linebacker, even though they do have a need at the linebacker position. Instead, they're going to go look to the interior, as I have those a little bit better value here. And they're going to take a player who I think can contribute to that defense in Jacqueline Roy. Roy is an athletic defensive tackle with plus physical traits. He sniffs out screens well, and he can knock balls down at the line of scrimmage when he's not able to get some penetration. He has good awareness of what's going on along the defensive line, what's happening around him, which I think is part of the reason why he gets these knockdowns and why he doesn't get fooled on screens. And he has, enough physical traits in order to act upon what he's taking in with that awareness. So Jacqueline Roy it is to the New York Jets. Then at pick 20 here in the third round, this may not be exactly what the Patriots are looking for in a wide receiver in this draft class, but I think that he has slid far enough that even the Patriots would take a guy who can simply just help their team, and that's going to be Marvin Mims. Mims can bring a vertical threat to this offense when or if Tyquan Thornton can't, and or Devontae Parker is hurt / too old to do that anymore. Honestly, I think that the Patriots could line Marvin Mims up anywhere and make use of his skill set. He is not only a vertical threat. He can be asked to catch and run. He has the vision to make tacklers miss in open space. He can high point the ball in contested catch situations, and best of all, he helps to make things easier for his quarterback with some of the things that he does on the field in terms of his route running and everything. To add to this, some icing to the cake, he's also an asset on special teams in the return game, which I think the New England always appreciates that as well. So you see the draft capital here that the Miami Dolphins have, who are up next on the clock, and I think that they have to be looking to trade back here, and Kansas City would be a good trading partner, whether Kansas City is looking to move up for a wide receiver or a cornerback. I think that there is a good tier of cornerbacks that has yet to be touched that Kansas City could be interested in taking their pick of the litter with. And in that, we're going to take the top guy right up here, Garrett Williams. Garrett Williams has probably fallen further than some teams would have expected, and Kansas City could use a man to run the opposite side of the field from L'Jarius Sneed. Garrett can bring some of the same physicality that you see in L'Jarius Sneed to the secondary. Los Angeles Chargers are up, and they're looking at wide receiver, running back, and edge right now. Kellen Moore was brought in to improve this rushing attack, and that isn't happening if you have to rely on Eckler down in and down out. Eckler won't be with this team much longer, but I wouldn't say that it's for sure that he isn't going to be there in 2023. Now, originally, I went Dwayne McBride because he'd be kind of that counterweight to Austin Eckler, but then I thought more about the other running backs that are on their roster, and I changed my mind. I'm going to go for the more dynamic Austin Eckler replacement type of choice here in Chase Brown. Chase is excellent at cutting back against the grain. He is ultra shifty. He also is solid in pass protection, which may be important if Kellen Moore truly wants to improve this play action game, which he has said that he would like to do with this offense. And I'll tell you what, Chargers fan, outside of the top two backs in this class, if there is one guy who absolutely exploded off of the film, it is this guy, Chase Brown. Absolutely, definitely a my guy. So if your team takes him or any other team, if you take him, you haven't watched any of his film, not familiar with Chase Brown, check out his tape. I really fell in love with him. Next, we are going to see Seattle coming up for someone. They're going to trade picks 107, 154, a future 5th here in 2024. Going to get back a future 7th to move up to pick 86. And there are so many routes that Seattle could take with this pick. And I think it really comes down to their exact vision and thoughts on a few of the players, but we're looking mostly at the front 7 here. And I ended up landing on edge rusher Derek Hall. He's great versus the run, and his pass rush is still developing. He's a long and powerful player who plays with an initial burst. He has the tools, he just needs a little bit more development yet. Then Minnesota comes up onto the board next, and this is going to be their final pick. Cornerbacks not getting ravaged has been to the benefit of the Vikings here, and I can't help but love the pick of Darius Rush for them. They desperately need speed in their secondary, and Darius Rush can bring that. He has excellent size and length, and he possesses good ball skills. The Chargers come up onto the clock next, and they receive a call from the Carolina Panthers looking to move up from their 93rd pick to pick 88, and they're going to hold strong on this phone call. Carolina would have liked pick 200 here in return, but the Chargers bluffed and they said it's 239 or no deal. And Carolina has looked at a few guards this offseason, so I'm going to have them come up here to finish off a tier of guards with Emil Ikior Jr. Emil is a physical, experienced, and effective blocker. His biggest issue is consistency. If he can come in and do his thing on every single down, then he should be a mainstay along this interior of this offensive line. Giants come up onto the board next, and this is going to be their final pick of this draft. The Giants may have a situation brewing at running back, and Tank Bigsby has a prototypical size, and he is quite versatile. He actually enjoys the job of pass protection, which I think is awesome, and will definitely catch teams' ears. He was very productive in college as a runner, and he has soft hands, so I think he could be a great matchup, especially worst-case scenario, for this offense in New York. Then the Dallas Cowboys come up onto the board, and they're going to look at linebackers here. Linebacker DeMarvin Overshown is a tall plus athlete who brings the heat when tackling, although the only issue is he's not a very consistent tackler. He's going to need to clean that up, but Overshown can drop back in coverage just fine, or he can come at the quarterback from the edge, so he's a nice versatile linebacker to add to this group that they already have. Then Buffalo comes up onto the board, and I'm going to have them going running back, and Buffalo has visited with running back Tyjae Spears, but I feel like they already have that skill set in the running back room. Eventually, they need to go and look to bring in a more powerful runner, which just really hasn't been the type that they've been going after, but I have them going after that in Dwayne McBride here. He has prototypical size, and he was an ultra-productive rusher in college. He has great balance between the tackles, and he can move a pile with pure power. He was ranked number 93 on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, and he shows patience to allow blocks to develop in front of him. In short, he is a classic downhill runner, and he runs with violence. Now, Cam Smith can help Baltimore on the perimeter, cornerback that they already took earlier in the draft, but they very well may also need help at the slot in their nickel slot cornerback position. And enter Travius Hodges Tomlinson. He is a quick, albeit undersized corner with lockdown upside. He is a physical corner, and he is technically sound in his man coverage. Although he has played along the perimeter most in the in college, more so than he did at the nickel. He projects best going against slot wide receivers in the NFL, so that's where we're going to project him for Baltimore. Chargers come up onto the board, and they absolutely need some help along the defensive line. I did mock a big defensive tackle to them recently, and I sort of felt that that wasn't necessary, and maybe it's not, but they certainly could use some help at the defensive end spot. And Kobe Wooden is an edge/defensive end who has plus athletics and can be an anchor against the run while providing some much-needed pass rush help to a squad who was sorely missing that when Bosa went down last season. Then Philadelphia is going to take their final pick in this little mock draft in Tyjae Spears. Tyjae is a fast running back. He's quick and he is agile. He possesses good vision. He takes care of the ball well, and he is a competitive and instinctive runner. He's not a powerful runner. He should be a nice counterbalance to what Kenneth Gainwell provides this offense. Miami comes up onto the board, and they absolutely need to address their offensive line. That is a requirement in this draft. However, the value just isn't quite there compared to some other positions that are currently onto the board. And Zach Charbonnet should be an excellent running back fit for the Dolphins. He is a full-sized running back with good strength and really good vision. He bounces off tacklers really well. He is oddly slippery when he's running. Don't expect Zach Charbonnet to come out and break huge runs and bring the ball to the house from the 40-yard line or something like that. He'll get more yards than you expect on plenty of plays, however. Now, the Cardinals still need a lot of help along their defensive front, and Zach Harrison is a gigantic physical presence on the field. He has shown flashes of dominance, however, there has been a lack of production in college. He's an edge/defensive end who can bring value on all downs and in all packages. Zach Harrison to Arizona it is, and we are going to see Washington go tight end here in Zach Kuntz. He is a flex tight end. He's not really a great blocker, but he is going to be a huge receiving threat for this offense, and that was Zach Kuntz. Then we're going to see Houston come up onto the board, and it's a bit of a reach here, but they have missed out on the top centers of this class. So they need to get their next best man up off of the board here. And they do have reason to suspect that San Francisco could go this route. So with those 3 picks coming up for San Fran, we're just going to take Juice Scruggs, play it safe, even though we pick up in a short while, and the value is not great here in the 3rd round for Juice. Juice is a really solid all-around prospect. He pops off of the snap and he wins at the point of attack. And at the end of the day, what more do you need from your center? If you only need 13 pieces of flair, then why wear 21 pieces of flair? That's Juice Scruggs. He's got 13 pieces of flair on. He'll do the job for you. San Francisco, I don't know how many pieces of flair it is in the movie, but San Francisco comes up and they need some backup tight end help. Tucker Kraft should be a good fit for the 49ers. He'll be learning from the best. He is a big tight end in a way that a tight end should be. He is versatile and he is fairly athletic. The kid is a bit raw, but that's why they're getting him at this point in the draft. Now, I did not love Tucker Kraft the first time that I watched his tape. Watched it again, and actually I saw what others are seeing. He does have an it factor to him. So a bigger fan of Tucker Kraft today than I was yesterday. Then Las Vegas comes up onto the board for their final pick in this draft, and we're going to go looking at linebacker with Noah Sewell. Noah Sewell is an interesting prospect. He plays like he has ADHD, but often enough he ends up in the right place to make a play. He has a filled out frame at 6'1.5" with 246 pounds on that frame, but it must all be muscle because the dude is not fat by any means. He's just a powerful throwback linebacker who makes plays all over the field. If you can rein in his ADHD-ness or give him the freedom to roam within your system, then I think he has a very high ceiling. The floor, on the other hand, is that he is too much of a liability on the field by making too many mistakes in over-pursuing on plays. Put him in the right situation, and I think that he'll be absolutely fine. San Francisco comes up onto the board here, and they need help at the nickel spot, slot safety, slot cornerback, and I think that safety, Christopher Smith, could be the answer here. He needs to improve on his tackling, but he has really good game IQ and ball skills. It's all instincts for this kid. He did not test very well at the combine. When you're good, you're just good. And if you watch Chris Smith, I think that you'll find yourself impressed more often than not. Then San Francisco's up on the board again, and they're going to take their final pick of this draft. San Francisco has lost quite a few pieces in their front seven as of late, and Keandre Coburn will be the start of getting that unit back into elite territory. Keandre has a quick first step, and he is a high-effort player who rarely ends up on his butt. He's a strong tackler, and he was number 2 for all the interior defensive linemen on my mass-adjusted athletics list. It's not that he's some sort of elite athlete, it's just that for his size, for his mass, he can move well, and that counts for something. Then we're going to kick off the 4th round here with Arizona, and the Cardinals have a Budda Baker problem. He wants out, and they need to cover their own butts here. I'm going to have them taking Jair Brown. Jair Brown is a student of the game, in my opinion, and he was highly productive in college. He plays with attitude, and I fully expect him to have a long and successful career in the NFL. He probably won't ever be as good as Budda Baker, but I mean, what can you do? You're getting a 4th round guy here in Jair Brown, who I think should be an asset. Then Houston comes up, and they're going to take their final pick in cornerback Clark Phillips III of this draft, this mock, and he has a quick first step, Clark Phillips III, and he is strong despite being undersized. He has fluid hips, he is tough, he's instinctual, and he has good ball skills. He lacks top end speed, so you are going to have to kind of watch out for the matchups with him. Another little added versatility that he brings to this team is that if Desmond King were to go down at any point, he would be able to drop into King's role in the slot, in my opinion. Then Kansas City is also going to be taking their final pick of this draft, and it's going to be wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson, who should be able to come in right into the Juju role. He won't take off the top of any defense, but he's a really good route runner. He has excellent hands and great body control. He's coming in with a plenty complete route tree, and he brings some versatility where you can really line him up anywhere on the field. Indianapolis Colts come up, and they're going to take their final pick of the draft here in cornerback Kyu Blu Kelly, who has good ball skills, and he can bring some serious attitude to this Colts defense. He has good strength to finish when tackling, and he shows great click-to-close ability in order. It's the ability to break up plays that are in front of you, kind of, stop, click, close. He's a man specialist with the instincts and skills to do well in zone, so there's really no schematic concerns for him. He can play both zone and man just fine. You put him out there and you let the boy play. He is a dark horse guy for me in this draft class. I really like, not love, really like a lot about Kyu Blu Kelly, including that name. Then Pittsburgh comes up onto the board, and we are going to pop off the next tier of linebackers here in Henry 2020. Henry is an instinctive middle linebacker who moves well laterally, and he tackles consistently. The Steelers have a big need at linebacker, and this is a decent value on the top of the 4th round here. It was a no-brainer to me for Pittsburgh. They absolutely need to be striking at that linebacker spot. Denver comes up onto the board, and you look at this, their draft capital, they could use some more. So when Jaguars call up, or maybe whatever, this is the trade. Jaguars move pick 121 and 185 in order to move up to 108 here in order to take edge Andre Carter. Andre is a tall 3-4 linebacker / edge prospect. He was ranked number 13 on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. He is not incredibly athletic by the numbers, but he has still shown that he can be a sideline-to-sideline playmaker. He didn't make the Freaks list for no reason. He is more than an edge rusher, and he is a tackling machine. This could be an absolute steal for Jacksonville come years 2 or 3 for Carter. He could stand to put on some weight, might have a bit of a role adjustment or something that Jacksonville could have in the plans for him. He has probably the most upside at this point in the draft of the edge rushers. Then Cleveland comes up, and they're going to take interior defensive tackle Gervon Dexter. Gervon has had flashes of dominance. He has a long and sizable frame for a defensive tackle. There are a couple of issues to clean up, but he is another guy who could be an absolute steal at this point of the draft. Then New Orleans is going to come up and take an absolutely fascinating prospect in running back Deuce Vaughn. Deuce is a small running back, but the dude can take 5 defenders out of their cleats all in one play. He's a great receiving back, and he will be expected to pitch in on day 1, assuming that running back Alvin Kamara there will be facing a suspension. When and if he gets time to learn from Alvin Kamara, that will also be very valuable to him. There are some skills that could translate from Alvin Kamara's game to Juice Vaughn's game, and also just help him get up to speed all the quicker if he has that possibility. Then Cleveland comes up onto the board, and making it number 8 on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list was linebacker Owen Pappoe. And Owen backed that up by absolutely popping off and dropping jaws at the combine. Owen is an elite athlete, and he brings long-term value as a will linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, but that's not their current need. Owen is quite instinctive in coverage, and he can definitely keep up as a Sam linebacker for them. He's a tackling machine, and that's where I think that he's going to be asked to contribute immediately for the Browns and then move into that will roll down the lane. Now the Jets are going to come up with their final pick of this mock draft, and they could use some help at center. Oluwatimi has good football IQ. He was productive at Michigan. He is strongest in the passing game, and he plays with tenacity. So Olusegun Oluwatimi it is to the New York Jets. Then Carolina is going to have back-to-back picks here. They're going to start off by picking Jaylon Jones with the first pick here. He has a solid base, and he is built well. He has a quick first step, and he is excellent in run support. He is best served as a nickelback for them, which is why we are going to see them go back-to-back cornerbacks here with cornerback Mekhi Gardner now coming off of the board for Carolina. Mekhi is also a reliable tackler, and he has a really high game IQ. The Panthers need help at more than just against the slot, which is why we are seeing 2 cornerbacks go off the board here to them. Mekhi has the frame and enough speed to match up on the perimeter, and he is good at tracking the ball downfield. Once he is beat, however, he doesn't really have the recovery speed to make up for that. That's going to be the worst part of his game. Then New Orleans comes up back onto the board for their final pick of this draft, and we are going to see that the Saints need some more help along this defensive line, and edge/defensive end Byron Young from Tennessee will bring a little versatility to their front. He's a physical run defender, and he's capable of taking on double teams for them as well. So he's a big boy, more of an end than an edge. And you could probably kick him into like a defensive tackle spot too. He brings some alignment versatility to this front end. Green Bay Packers come back up onto the board, and Nick Herbig actually is not next up on my edge list, but he is in range, and the Packers have shown interest in him and not the other 2 that I have above him. So Nick Herbig it is. He had a lot of sack production in college. He rushes the quarterback with a plan, and he plays with a hot motor. Then New England comes up onto the board, and they're going to be looking at running back, and I would give them Sean Tucker. However, there are some medical concerns currently there, and I feel like the Patriots have dealt with enough running back medical issues in recent years for that to scare them away almost no matter what, depending on exactly what those medical issues are. Then Keaton Mitchell is also a guy who I have next up on my list after Sean Tucker, but he would never get on the field because he cannot pass block, and we all know that Bill Belichick's not going to put a guy on the field if he cannot pass block at all. So Roschon Johnson it is going to be. He has size, he has power, he has vision, and he has patience, and I think that those are all things that the Patriots do value. Next up, we are going to see Washington take their final pick of this draft, and Washington needs to focus on their offensive line, and they will probably be taking a few shots at their offensive line since they have not addressed it at this point in the draft. Braden Daniels is a versatile tackle/guard prospect with good football IQ. He is mobile, and he is timely with his blocks, so I think that will be a good addition to Washington. Minnesota comes up to the board next, and we're going to see a massive jump up from the Arizona Cardinals with picks 166 and 168 for pick 119. Minnesota has only picked twice in this draft so far. You see that draft capital, so they are looking to move back, one of these being a 7th rounder. This is definitely a reach on my board, but it's also decent trade value for the Cardinals, and they have had plenty of capital in this draft to ensure that they can get some of their needs and their targets. They've even acquired a couple of pieces of future capital in this draft, so they're not going to miss out on the last decent center prospect of the draft in Ricky Stromberg. Ricky is excellent in the run game. He has good IQ and instincts. He's a physical dude. His pass protection, however, is going to need some work. And if there's ever a time for Arizona to kind of get a guy who they need to develop the pass protection compared to having to develop the run protection, it would be currently right now, because Arizona's probably going to need to lean on that run. We've already kind of dictated that in this draft earlier with them anyways, so that really makes some sense. And hopefully his pass protection will be up to speed by the time that Kyler Murray comes back. Then Pittsburgh comes up onto the board for their final pick of this draft, and Pittsburgh has addressed their primary needs, and it is starting to look for the best player available, which is probably going to be a wide receiver right now on my board, but they're not going to go that direction. They already have safety. Ronnie Hickman is going to be the guy here. He is a high processing, physical, and versatile player who can contribute on special teams. So we're going to have Pittsburgh bring him in. He's not a high ceiling player, but he is a football player. And when you are drafting guys to play football for your team, that's a good trait to have. Then Denver is going to come up onto the board for their final pick of this draft, and we're going to add a vertical threat to this receiving core in Tyler Scott. Their receiving group is they're getting old, a little banged up outside of Jerry Jeudy. Even he got banged up recently, so let's get some guys in there. Tyler Scott is a smooth operator who knows how to take advantage underneath due to his vertical threat abilities. So he's such a good vertical threat guy that teams have to respect that, and then he knows how to take advantage of that and work the underneath routes as well. Then we have Miami coming up for their final pick of the draft, and they're going to go offensive line. Wanya Morris, he is a versatile scheme fit for them, just what the Dolphins are looking for. He has long arms and he has prototypical size. He plays strong and he has a quick first step, which is going to be important in that system. Then Seattle's going to come up for their final pick of this draft, and we will see them taking wide receiver Michael Wilson. He's excellent at finding the soft spots against zone coverage. He has good ball skills, size, and he plays strong. He gets a good amount of yak despite a lack of top end speed. He can play slot or he can pop outside on the perimeter. I think just the type of guy that Seattle would be looking for. Then Baltimore is going to come up for their final pick of this draft, and wide receiver Kayshon Boutte has immense upside. He is one of the bigger boom or bust prospects of this entire class. He looks natural on the field and he has wide receiver 1 upside. He creates yak and he runs routes well. He can create some separation when going vertically, but he has some concentration and drop issues. If he can put it all together, I believe this includes some off the field concerns, then this could be a great pick. Or he could disappear within a year or two from the league. Next up is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers with their final pick of this draft, and the run on these backlogged wide receivers that teams have been passing up on is here, and the perfect match is next up on my board for the Chargers. That's going to be Trey Palmer. He is electric, and he can bring that electricity in the return game as well. He has fairly prototypical size and is obviously a deep threat. He has a third gear that he's able to tap into that most players don't in order to separate late in his routes. He is exactly what this offense needs to open things up underneath. Love that pick for the Chargers. Then Cleveland's going to come up onto the board for their final pick, and they don't really have much depth behind Nick Chubb at running back. In Keaton Mitchell, the Browns get an absolute home run hitter. He has amazing breakaway skills and he runs low and he falls forward. Additionally, he has an elite receiving skill set. He brings all the elements to this running back group that it is currently missing, and he gives them some much needed depth. He is definitely a my guy. Love the film on Keaton Mitchell. And that's going to bring us to the Jacksonville Jaguars for their final pick of the draft. And I've been trying to find a home for tight end Luke Schoonmaker for at least a round at this point in the draft, and finally he finds a home in a team that is absolutely happy to have him fall to them. This works out really well for Jacksonville. Luke has a slightly awkward body type. Like, he is all legs, man, but he's also a solid vertical threat, and he has some blocking upside. He should be a great fit here for Jacksonville and what they're going to be looking for out of their tight end. Then Tampa Bay is going to come up onto the board, and by many this would probably be considered to be a huge fall for safety Jamie Robinson. I have a 3rd/4th round draft grade on him, so I just think it's a good value at this point in the draft, not necessarily some sort of massive fall. Regardless, Jamie Robinson would be considered a steal here by many. He plays with a high motor and he is a tackling machine. He'll operate from the strong safety spot primarily, but he does provide some additional versatility to this offense on a whole, and while they're doing some roster turnover, that could be very valuable. Then Dallas comes up onto the board next for their final pick of the draft. I believe we're going to be going interior defensive line here in Kobe Turner. So DeMarcus Lawrence is 30 years old, and it cannot hurt to get more depth along this defensive line while also possibly prepping for a future where either DeMarcus Lawrence is just some sort of rotational guy for you, or maybe he's not even around any longer through retirement or whatnot. You know, I don't say that to say that, oh, Kobe Turner's your replacement. He's probably not DeMarcus Lawrence, right? But Kobe Turner is excellent against the run. He sheds blocks really well. He has excellent counter moves, and he plays with his instincts. He is a stout, strong, physical player, and he should come in ready to contribute on day one at the next level as a rotational guy along this offensive line. I personally really like Kobe Turner a lot. Buffalo is next up for their final pick of the draft, and we're going to see them going wide receiver in Parker Washington. The Bills need to take some of the attention away here from Stephon Diggs to help this offense run at full throttle, and maybe another receiver could help out there. I mean, I kind of like the weapons that they have, but it's just they need something else, clearly. So Parker Washington is an excellent receiver. He has really good hands. He seems to run his routes cleanly, and he is good at creating yak in open space. He's most likely a slot receiver, and if you watch some of his tape, you'll notice that he looks like a running back. He's a very odd build for a receiver. Additionally, he can contribute on special teams, so that is a plus here for Parker Washington. He's a really interesting prospect. Then Cincinnati is going to come up for their final pick of the draft. Sean Tucker. Cincinnati almost certainly, probably, needs a running back. Sean Tucker has some health concerns that may or may not be concerns for teams. I can't really get a good gauge on how concerning they are. In this situation, he's the last of a tier, so we're going to nab him up. Tucker is explosive, he's competitive, and he shows great body control when rushing the ball. Then up next, we're going to see Carolina take KJ Henry with their last pick of this draft. He's an edge prospect who has high IQ, and he's an early down edge rusher. He is physical, and he has a prototypical build. He just possesses a really great ability to get off of the block in the run game. We're going to continue to go edge here with Chicago as they look to take Carl Brooks off the board to help out their front seven along this defensive line with an edge/defensive end prospect. Carl has been a very productive, high-effort sack artist, and he shows excellent hand power at the point of attack. He could be a very good find for them at this point of the draft. And Tampa Bay is coming up for their last pick of this draft, and they still have so many needs, but their need for everything has also been a strength for them in this draft. It's been allowing them to go and grab a few of these possible gems that seem to have possibly been falling to them. Don't ask interior defensive lineman Zach Pickens to help against the run. You're only going to want him on the field on passing downs. He's a physical presence on the field, and he does some things really well, which Tampa could use as they overturn this roster. But just don't ask Zach to help against the run. Not something he's going to be able to do. And with the final pick of this draft, the final pick for New England, we're going to see them go with a near my guy, possibly, I don't know, maybe he's a my guy in Yaya Diaby. Really liked him a lot. New England is going to get an edge here in Yaya Diaby, who is built. His body is just absolutely built for leverage. He is naturally strong in both his upper and his lower body, complete package when it comes to strength, and he combines that strength with speed to be a really effective pass rusher, and that's going to be his job. Get to the quarterback, Yaya. Yaya, he will. All right, that's it. Thank you very much, and I will be up live on draft day, so come visit me. You don't have to hang out with me the entirety of the time. And for each draft day, 1, 2, and 3. All right, peace out.